There is a quiet kind of loneliness that does not arrive with tears. It arrives with responsibility, with calm, with the steady mask of strength that others have learned to trust. It lives in the pauses between questions never asked, in the deep breath taken before saying, "I'm fine," in the space where vulnerability once lived, now replaced by duty. Some people are praised for how much they can carry, for how little they need, for how solid they remain when the world begins to tremble. But even mountains feel the slow erosion of time, and even the strongest hands grow tired of holding everything together. The hidden loneliness of being the strong one is not loud. It is soft. It is invisible. And it is everywhere. Chapter 1. The silent role recognition/emotional beginning. There is a moment when strength stops feeling like a choice and begins to feel like a duty. It is rarely announced. It does not come with a clear beginning or a formal decision. It arrives instead through habit, through repetition, through the quiet understanding that everyone has started looking in one direction, and that direction is you. You become the call they make when the world feels uncertain. The calm voice in the room when panic begins to rise. The one who listens longer, speaks less, steadies more. At first, it almost feels like honor, something close to purpose. To be trusted is to be valuable. To be dependable is to be needed. But over time, the role begins to settle into the bones. And without noticing, the body forgets how to soften. The laughter becomes measured. The stories become lighter. The truth becomes filtered. Needs are translated into silence before they ever reach the air. Conversations become one-sided echoes. Questions are asked, answers are given. But no one pauses to ask the quiet one how they are really holding themselves together. And perhaps they would not know how to answer if asked. Because when strength becomes identity, weakness can start to feel like betrayal. To the people who depend on you. To the image they have carefully built. To the version of yourself that learned, a long time ago, that being too much was dangerous. So you learn to carry without complaint. To smile without explanation. To exist as the safe place for everyone else, while standing on ground that feels just a little less solid each day. And still, you stay silent. Because silence has always felt like strength. Chapter 2. Where strength was born. Root cause/origins. Before strength became a title, it was a shield. Before it became an expectation, it was an instinct. Somewhere in the quiet years of becoming, there were small moments that went unnoticed by the world but were carefully recorded by the heart. Moments when asking for help brought disappointment. When showing emotion felt like an inconvenience. When the air in the room changed because of a simple, honest need. And so, something learned to adapt. The child learned to read a room the way others read a book. To sense the tiniest shift in mood. To calculate what version of themselves would disturb the least, would ask the least, would require the least. Love, in that space, often arrived tied to performance. To usefulness. To how quietly problems were handled, how quickly feelings were folded away. Be strong, they said. And strength did not feel like courage. It felt like disappearance. So strength took root like a language learned before word. Not as pride, but as protection. Not as power, but as prevention. It whispered, do not make it harder. Do not need too much. Do not fall apart where someone might have to carry you. Over time, this message wove itself into identity. Dependability became safety. Control became comfort. Endurance became love. And no one noticed the cost. Because to the outside world, it looked like resilience. It looked like maturity. It looked like someone who had everything together. But beneath it all was a quieter truth. Strength was never chosen. It was inherited, conditioned, earned in exchange for connection, and carried forward long after the danger had disappeared. Chapter 3. The psychology of carrying. Scientific, psychological explanation. The mind is shaped by what it must survive. When a person is placed in the role of the strong one for too long, the brain begins to build an identity around it. Neural pathways form around hyper-awareness, responsibility, and emotional control. The nervous system learns to stay alert even in moments meant for rest. This is not simple willpower. It is biology adapting to expectation. The brain, in its quiet effort to protect, starts to associate safety with control. If everything is managed, if every detail is handled, if no one else needs to step in, then nothing can break. Nothing can be lost. Nothing can fall apart. So emotions are reorganized. Not erased, but placed in the background, like forgotten music playing in distant rooms. Sadness is delayed. Anger is softened. Fear is renamed as being prepared. Over time, the body forgets what release feels like. Even in moments of stillness, there is tension beneath the skin. A readiness to respond. A sensitivity to tone shift. A habit of scanning for what might go wrong, even when everything is quiet. Psychologists call this emotional self-suppression. A learned disconnection from one's own needs in favor of stability. But the human heart was not designed to be an endless container. Feelings that are not expressed do not disappear. They become stored in the body, in the breath, in the spaces between words. They turn into fatigue that sleep cannot cure. Into distance that no one understands. Into a loneliness that has no visible cause. And still, the world calls it strength. A person becomes admired for staying composed, admired for never needing too much, while inside, the nervous system lives in a quiet, constant state of waiting. Waiting for permission to finally exhale. Chapter 4. Conflict without witness. Inner conflict and resistance inside the strong one. There are two voices that rarely meet. One of them longs to be seen. Not admired. Not depended on. Simply seen in the small, hidden places where the armor has grown heavy. This voice whispers in the middle of the night. In the quiet after everyone else has spoken. In the moments when the world finally softens, and the mask has no one left to perform for. It says, I am tired. It says, I want someone to notice. It says, I don't want to be the strongest person in the room anymore. But the second voice arrives just as quickly. It reminds you of the roles you play, of the people who lean on your steadiness, of the chaos that might unfold if you are not okay, or if you are not the one holding the edges together. This voice is not cruel. It believes it is protecting something precious. It says, do not be a burden. Do not ask for too much. Do not fall apart where someone might see. And so, the inner world becomes a quiet battleground. On one side, a deep human yearning for closeness, softness, rescue. On the other, a relentless belief that love is earned through endurance. You start to resist your own emotions the way others resist storms. You minimize them. Name them something smaller. Tell yourself others have it worse. You learn to be the comfort in the room, even as your own heart grows unfamiliar. Even as laughter starts to feel rehearsed. Even as joy becomes something you remember more than feel. The most painful part is not the exhaustion. It is the absence of witness. No one sees the trembling hands behind the steady posture. No one hears the questions you swallow. No one knows how often you almost speak and choose silence instead. This is the hidden war of the strong one. A war where no one claps. A war with no visible scars. A war that quietly convinces you that needing is a form of failure. Chapter 5. When the armor cracks. Turning point/realization. The breaking point is not always loud. Sometimes it arrives in an ordinary moment. A hand that trembles over a cup of tea. A sudden wave of tears that has no name. A silence that feels heavier than any argument. The world looks the same. The room has not changed. Only something inside has shifted. The armor, once invisible and effortless, suddenly feels too tight. Every expectation, every responsibility, every unspoken agreement presses closer to the skin. And for the first time, the question appears, how much longer can this be carried? It is not a question meant for others. It is a question whispered inward. Exhaustion begins to reveal its honesty. not as weakness but as truth, a truth that has waited patiently beneath years of strength. The body, so loyal for so long, finally speaks in its own language, through tight shoulders that refuse to relax, through a heaviness behind the eyes, through a heart that no longer knows how to pretend it is unaffected. And something else appears there, too. A quiet, unexpected understanding that strength without space to soften is not strength at all. It is survival that has overstayed its welcome, a story that has run too long without revision. In that moment, self-compassion brushes against awareness, not a solution, not a grand declaration, just a single, delicate realization: perhaps there is another way to exist. And for the first time in a very long time, the strong one does not immediately push the feeling away. They sit with it. They feel the crack in the armor. And in that crack, they notice something they had forgotten how to recognize. Chapter 6. Learning a new language. Healing and integration. A new language does not arrive fully formed. It does not come with clear instructions or fluent sentences. It arrives in fragments, in hesitation, in small, unfamiliar sounds that feel awkward in the mouth. For the one who has always been strong, softness feels like a foreign tongue. At first, it appears in subtle ways. A longer pause before answering, "I'm fine." A moment of honesty that slips out, without preparation. A tear that is not immediately wiped away. There is no grand announcement, only small experiments with truth. The body begins to notice the difference. How a shared silence can feel lighter than a hidden one. How a quiet admission can relieve more than a perfect solution. How being held, even briefly, does not erase strength, it reshapes it. Old beliefs do not disappear quickly. The mind still flinches at the idea of relying on someone else, still calculates the risk of vulnerability, still wonders if this softer version will be less loved, less valued, less needed. But slowly, something deeper begins to rewrite itself. A realization forms, gentle but steady. Strength was never meant to be carried alone. It was never meant to isolate or estrange or exhaust. True strength includes breath, includes rest, includes the courage to say, "This is heavy," and allow another hand to touch the weight. And in this new language there are new words: permission, tenderness, shared space, being seen, not as a hero, not as a pillar, but as a human heart, learning to beat in its full rhythm again. Chapter 7. Soft is still strong. Poetic closure / reflection. In the beginning, strength meant holding everything together. It meant refusing to bend. It meant becoming a wall against the world. But now, strength has learned a quieter meaning. It is the gentle awareness of one's own limit. It is the trembling honesty of an unmasked moment. It is the willingness to be witnessed, not in perfection but in truth. Softness, once feared, is revealed as depth. Not the absence of resilience, but the presence of life. A softened heart feels more, yes, but it also breathes more. It moves instead of freezing. It connects instead of standing alone. The strong one is no longer alone on the battlefield of endurance. They have stepped down from the position of constant protector and stepped into the reality of being human. Still capable, still resilient, still brave, but now also open. And in this openness, something incredible happens. The world does not collapse. The people do not leave. The identity does not disappear. Instead, a new presence forms, one that is rooted, calm, and alive. A presence that does not need to prove its strength, because it no longer doubts it. The hidden loneliness begins to dissolve, not because it was fought, but because it was finally understood. And what remains is not the echo of carrying the world, but the quiet peace of being carried too. A reminder, held in the softest part of the chest. Even the strongest ones were never meant to be strong alone.